Chag Shavuot. The sixth parak, we mentioned this before, is a little bit unique in the sense that in terms of, how should I say, liturgical purity, it probably isn't correct to refer to it as a parak of Mishnah. It probably is more along the lines of Tosefta. So in other words, these are like Mishnayot that were bounced from the first edition of the Mishnah, which was really meant to contain, the most essential elements of Torah Sheba'al Peh. And even though Pirkei Avot is really more about Midot than anything else, perhaps it is the most important Masechet that we have. This particular parak, if you look in older prints, older Sidurim, it's not ubiquitous. You won't find it everywhere. You'll find references. Apparently, it became much more popular to add this. Just like we have a bunch of minor Masechtot, we have other sources that don't really appear directly in the Talmud. Same time period, same tzaddikim. We just, for whatever reason, now have come to incorporate it more into the standard. So today, you buy a Pirush of Pirkei Avot, you expect it to have the sixth parak in it. Just didn't used to be the case. I'm mentioning this for the sake of academic intellectual honesty. Nonetheless, the parak itself doesn't deal so much with midot per se. It does, in a way, it talks a lot more about the acquisition of the Torah. In other words, the efforts that an individual has made, maybe the methodology, the technique, some degree of sacrifice, but it's more about attitudes towards learning, not necessarily about being honest in terms of business, in terms of how we interrogate witnesses, or how we suspect or presume innocence. There are a lot of different pieces of advice, how we behave ourselves when it comes to tzedakah, when it comes to our different abilities. We talked about gvura, osher, simcha, all these things. This is really specifically devoted to the learning of the Torah itself. Maybe that's just how it somehow became fashionable to learn it between Pesach and Shavuot, specifically because the sixth week, where we would have no chapter corresponding, would be the week right before Shavuot, where we actually, focus quite a bit on the acquisition of the Torah. So either one of you is welcome. Go ahead. I don't know how on Google Drive how to do diacritics, the ta'amim, the nikudot. Yeah, I don't always have access to Microsoft Word, but I don't know how to. I'm sure there's a way. I just don't know what it is.
So you type this?
This I typed, yeah.
So you find the text soundtracks, so you don't have to use line typing?
Online, no. There's nobody punctuates. Nobody punctuates the text. Take a look. Nah, here's what it is. It's not that bad. I type very quickly anyway. It's not a big deal. I type at the speed of light. Yeah, no. I'm sure. Right, apps maybe. Okay, so we'll see. Anyhow, it's not. The typing takes a second. That's really not a big deal. It's just the nikudot. I could type them. It doesn't even have. I don't know if Google Drive has the ability. Anyway, here's what it is. Alright, I'll read the Hebrew then if you want. Maybe we'll do that. I'll read the Hebrew and you can read the translation. It'll go a little bit faster. So we're in Masechet Avot. This is the sixth and final chapter, as we said, probably more Tosefta than anything else. Second Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Lewi, בכל יום ויום בת קול יוצאת מהר חורב ומכרזת ואומרת אוהליהם לבריות מעלבונה של תורה. That's a mistake, should have been a nun. שכל מי שאינו עוסק בתורה נקרא נזוף, שנאמר, פסוק משלי, נדם זהב באף חזיר אישה יפה ושרה טעם, ואומר והלוחות מעשה אלוהים המה, והמכתב מכתב אלוהים הוא חרות על הלוחות. This is what I would want to emphasize with the נקודות. אל תקרא או אל תקרא חרות אלא חירות. Instead of a קמץ, it should read a צירה. שאין לך בן חורין אלא מי שעוסק בתלמוד תורה, וכל מי שעוסק בתלמוד תורה הרי זה מתעלה. שנאמר ובמתנה נחליאל ומנחליאל במות. And because we, for the past 6 weeks, have been choosing the Mishnot with the most bizarre examples and the most bizarre proofs, and supports from the scripture that are almost entirely irrelevant to the Mishnah, we decided to continue in the same vein, and we'll see that the psukim that we're quoting here have precious little to do with what the Mishnah is trying to tell us. Go ahead, Yohan, at least seemingly.
In English?
Yeah.
Rabbi Yoshua ben Lewi said, each and every day an echo is issued from Mount Horeb, and it declares and says how.
Whoa! In the language of the Navi, this is how we translate. Sometimes you have like Y.
Okay.
So Y would be in Hebrew like Waw Yod.
Okay.
Would be like Waili, or Waila is like.
That's where the Oigai comes from?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. It's like trouble comes to me or sorrow comes to me. Something like that.
Very Ashkenazi thing.
Yeah. Well, it appears in the Navi, not very frequently, but it appears in the Navi. I used to remember how they said this and how they translated this in French. I gave away the last copy I had of Tzadok Khan's translation.
There is a word called O, like this little O with an accent.
With a circle flakes?
Yeah.
Maybe that was it. No, but
that's probably more.
You don't have a Tanakh in French, do you? Out of sheer curiosity? Okay, I mean, we can look it up after, but.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anyway.
No, because it's not. Yeah. Oh, I don't think it. Why we translate it as like.
I don't think it's the same
It's
thing.
threatening. It's more like trouble will come to you, or you know. Anyway.
Woe is unto the created people for the insult of the Torah. For anyone who does not preoccupy himself with the Torah is called yelled at. As it is said in Proverbs, a golden nose ring in the nose of a king, such is a pretty woman liking taste.
David has a fashion comment he'd like to
the
insert.
like
We're going to veto it. Go ahead.
And it is also said in Shemot, and the tablets are themselves the handiwork of the Lord, and the writing was the writing of the Lord, etched onto the tablets. You have to translate etched for me in language I understand.
Well, so laharot in Hebrew means gravure, like to engrave something or to chisel or carve something out. We know they were made of stone, and so the only way to write on stone, either you paint on top of it or you carve out of it.
Yeah.
So, and interestingly enough, we call it michtav. This is also a bizarre thing, but when it comes to ktav, it's always, whatever we call ktav is always ink applied on top of a substrate, like on top of paper. So if you want to write a mezuzah, you want to write a perek tefillin, it has to be, the letters have to be not just stained, it has to be like a layer of ink that you can scratch off afterwards. But in this case, we call it michtav, even though it's not written, but rather carved or chiseled somehow into the stone.
So etched onto the tablet, don't read etched, but rather freedom.
So don't read harut, which means etched, ela hirut, like bnei hurim, which is freedom, right, liberty.
As there is no free man other than one who preoccupies himself with the Torah. And anyone who preoccupies himself with the study of the Torah becomes uplifted, as it is said, from Matana to Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel to Bamot.
Okay. Step one, there's a simple translation of the Mishnah. Linzof in Hebrew, linzof means to yell at someone or to shout at someone. It's a way of verbally admonishing someone or verbally chastising someone. Just follow me here. Rosh ben Levi said as follows, okay? Each and every day an echo is issued from Har Horev, and it declares and it says, "Woe is unto the people for the insult of the Torah," as if to say, trouble will come to you, like you should be punished for this. Now, woe is me is how people used to say they were sorry in like Shakespearean English, or they felt bad. If my house burned down, so I would say, "Oh, woe is me," like woe is happened to me. Anyway, so I understand the message that you're trying to get across is a message of the Torah should be studied, it was given, it needs to be appreciated by Am Yisrael, it needs to be revered, and it isn't, or apparently not sufficiently. So what? So anyone who doesn't sufficiently, let's say, revere or respect or honor the Torah, he's called Nazuf. Okay? And even here I made some assumptions, because when he says in Hebrew means offense or insult. Right? Chazal said that the world exists only thanks to those tzaddikim, you may have heard this before. Those who are those tzaddikim who are insulted but don't insult. In other words, they can hear themselves be berated, and they don't resort to berating other people, or to berating back for what it's worth. So let's assume the Torah needs to be respected, needs to be appreciated, needs to be revered. And then we're told that anyone who doesn't practice himself with the Torah is called yelled at. Linzof again means like to verbally admonish someone, or he's maybe deserves to be yelled at. Because it says in the pasuk, Nezim Zahab Baf Hazir, like a golden ring in the nose of a pig, Ishayafa was Saratam. And where in this pasuk, Yohan, do we make reference to yelling at people? Or to admonishment or chastising someone? Okay, I thought it was just me. What does a pig and a nose ring have to do with yelling at people for not learning Torah?
There is nothing like a word that has like a really firming has some shards.
He makes no attempt whatsoever to even explain the connection between what the drasha and the words in the pasuk. I mean, it's a beautiful pasuk.
But there's nothing like as soon as coming. There's no meaning, not even a word that has the same shards. Nothing.
Right. And again, I thought it was just me. So it looks like it's a question, right?
It is.
Okay, and then we move on and we say V'ne'emar, and also it is said. Now, normally V'ne'emar, we'll talk about this in a minute, it introduces a concept that's supposed to come serve as a proof. V'luchot ma'aseh Elohim hema, the luchot were created by Hashem. So it wasn't like Hashem took stone that was already in Olam Hazeh. It's not like it was a new creation, created out of nowhere. Michtav Elohim hu, and don't tell me it was Moshe Rabbeinu who chiseled the writing, the words into the luchot. The second time, yes. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu tell him? But the first time it was Hashem. So Hashem created the luchot, and He created this writing, which apparently was some form of engraving on the luchot. Lifsol in Hebrew, like a pesel, like to chisel or to carve something.
Which is a different word from here.
Correct. When Moshe makes it, it's called pesol lecha, right?
Yeah, when God makes it, it says charut, right?
Well, right.
So
It doesn't say harot lecha, right? It's pesol lecha. Yes and no, in the sense that it could be that the reference is only to the luchot themselves. Meaning, if it's to making the luchot, that's not michtav, that's not writing. That's just carving them out the way they need to be.
Right, the stones.
The stones themselves, the tablets themselves. So, another pasuk that we bring in support of this concept, V'aluchot ma'aseh Elohim hema, the luchot themselves are a creation of Hashem, the handiwork of the Lord, something made by the hands of Hashem, and the writing was the writing of the Lord. Right? Harut al haluchot, and so the pasuk comes to tell you, this writing was like etched into the luchot. Al tiqri harut, ela hirut. Don't read harut engraved, but rather hirut as in freedom. So your freedom, your liberty, depends on what's carved into the luchot. So this is intentional. Etymological ambiguity, we can call this, because we use one word and we can manipulate it a little bit, look at it from different angles and understand different things. Right? Because there's no such thing as a free man unless he preoccupies himself with Torah. Okay, and an additional blessing if you happen to preoccupy yourself. By the way, preoccupy in English is not preoccupy in modern Latin language. That we spoke about this once. To preoccupy yourself in English just means to make yourself busy, like occupied. How in French it became, or in Italian I guess it's the same way. Right, worried in a negative connotation. I don't know. That's not occupation. Is just what you do. It's not what you worry about. But it took on a different connotation in the Romance languages. In English, I think the sense is a little bit more etymologically loyal.
But there was a difference between preoccupied and occupied.
Preoccupied would be something that makes you something that persists. So I have an occupation. This is what I do. So I can say that to say that I'm occupied in English would be I'm busy doing something. To say that I'm preoccupied, it implies that I'm preempted from doing anything else, or even the normal things that I would do, because something came up. Like before my regularly scheduled activity, something came up, or there's something going on that's bothering me, preventing me from doing what I would otherwise do. The pre just is more of a time reference than anything else. Like I would be occupied during the day by working with meat. If I'm preoccupied, it's because something other than that came up and prevented me from doing what I would otherwise be doing.
So in this case, it's like preoccupied.
To make yourself busy with something. I mean, it should be as if to say almost your primary occupation.
Exactly.
Right.
Not just occupied.
It comes before the yes, and la misha osek b'Torah, and we'll talk about this. What exactly la asok b'Torah means, but it sounds like this is your occupation. I mean, this is your primary occupation. Right? And so there's an additional bracha here, that one who preoccupies himself with the study of the Torah becomes uplifted. Okay? This, gentlemen, is the icing on the cake. How do I know that by learning Torah I become uplifted? Out of maybe 500,000 psukim you could have pulled from any one of the Nevi'im or any one of the Ketuvim, this is the pasuk that proves it. What's the pasuk? Do you even know where this reference is from?
It says Bamidbar 21 in the King.
Thank you. This is why I don't like to give things out and ready. The mind atrophies. You believe everything is on the paper and you just go, you eat. So
He talks about, I don't know, that's here where he talks about the different steps in the desert.
yeah,
From one place to the other, where you move from one, the different stops that when the Muslim to Israel.
Is it like in Pasha?
I think it's Makkah or Masai, right?
Masai, yeah.
Masai.
Yeah, the beginning, right?
Yeah, the very beginning is exactly what it is. So what? And it's not even clear. The two I had to put in square parentheses because it's not even so accurate. So these are it's a list of the camps. It doesn't even tell you literally we went from here to there. So we went from Matana Nahaliel, Nahaliel Bamot. So from Matana we ended up in Nahaliel, and from Nahaliel we ended up in Bamot. Now these are the names of places. You with me? The names of places. Where's the bracha? Because I went from the Upper West Side to the Upper East Side, and the Upper East Side to the Bronx. Implies I went to the bracha.
Isn't the bracha the name of the places?
Okay, so
Like
the name of the place.
It's a gift, so it's a kind of
And this is where we receive the Torah. You're trying to use this as a proof. No offense, but let me tell me. Here's my proof to you that someone who learns Torah becomes uplifted. Bring me a pasuk from Yeshaya that talks about the promise of Gan Eden and Olam Haba, about Ruach HaKodesh, what it's like to be the Mashiach. You got 101 different things you could have brought to prove to me that by learning Torah I become exalted, I become uplifted, I become worthy, deserving of respect. This is what you found.
Do we know what, is there any event that happened in Makkah? That is,
We don't have anything clear in the Torah. This is what happened. Maybe Midrashim that talk about certain
So we have
certain things happening in certain places. Bamot Hagai we have a reference to, which might be not far from the guy across from Beit Peor. Maybe it's not so clear that even then the reference would be direct to what we had to do. Then that's what the Goyim were doing there. Maybe eventually we did worship Baal Peor, but not necessarily at the time. So because we happened to go, we passed through 3 places in succession that had names that we can learn something from. So it's a matana. The name happens to correspond to gift. Okay, literally gift in English, the etymology is to give. So gift in Old English is something that was gived. Don. I gave you just something different. So we went from a place called matana, that which was given, to a place called Nahaliel. Nahaliel sounds like Nahala. The root would be Nahala. It could be Nahal, by the way, but let's assume. So Nahal would be like a stream.
okay.
Nahaliel would be if you want to read it as Nahala, this would be like the portion or the inheritance of Hashem. And from Nahaliel went to Bamot. And Bamot implies, what's a Bama in Hebrew?
is like a pillar.
Bama, it's more like a stage or a podium, or and it can also be used to similar, right? Same etymology. It could also be used, to refer to an altar.
Right, that was
Bamot Baal would be places where they worship Avodah Zarah, but the reason that it's called referred this way is because a Bama is usually something that's raised. Incidentally, you may or may not be aware of this. Do you know what the Bet Knesset used to look like in antiquity? Your standard Bet Knesset today, in Italy and France, I'm sure it's the same thing. You basically have, people sit all around. You have the Aron in the front, hopefully facing, east or southeast.
Then you have the bima, so in the center is that
Right, and we refer to it as a bima, right? And maybe for acoustic effect, it's lifted up above. At least there's the floor level. Maybe the seats are sometimes staggered. It looks like a stadium. Maybe it's flat. Have you ever been through any halachic literature on what the Bet Knesset used to look like?
I think they always say it's probably from Tzfat or something like that, so it's not black only.
In Tzfat they might.
And it was kind of the same. It was
Might be radically different.
semicircular kind of structure.
No, the language used in the Mishnah is that if someone descends to represent the tzibur as a hazan, and he starts to stutter or to mumble when it comes to the bracha that was inserted specifically relating to the Christians, which is Laminim Rabashlim Atei Tichva, that if he descended, we lift him up.
So he was going down.
Right, which implies that he was going down. In other words, the bima used to be, what we call today the bima, is actually probably fashioned more out of secular culture than out of religious culture, because the Chazan used to be, Chazal said, that the Chazan would be in the deepest place of the Bet Knesset, and he would be physically the most humble person in the Bet, meaning he would be physically lower than everyone else, and from this place he can represent everyone. This is like the positive application of what's called the lowest common denominator. I mean, there's no one in the Bet Knesset who's lower than him, and out of this humility, he represents the tzibur. Now you're comparing this to the Luciano Pavarotti, who's the Hazan that everybody wants to put up on a pedestal, so everybody can hear him, everybody can be impressed with him. But it's to show you the culture of antiquity versus the culture of today. So what we call the bama is so counterintuitive to the concept of when you say uplifting, we physically lift the guy up. Bamot implies a high place. So if he's telling me the Torah uplifts me, it's one thing, but the same word, bama, is also used for bamot of avodah zarah, where the goyim worship on altars and on podiums and on stages that are made for the wrong reason. I mean, we do have a mizbeach in Beit HaMikdash, and we do climb steps in order to get there, but outside of the Mikdash it was the opposite. The Hazan, who's the center of attention, is actually the guy who occupies the lowest place in the building. And they used to make it with 15 steps going down. This is Shiur Ma'arot. We had 14 Shiur Lamarot, 14 Shiur HaMa'arot, 1 Shiur Lamarot. Anyway, so because we have this funny coincidence of 3 places in a row that imply gift, inheritance, and then some kind of elevated plateau, an elevated level, we can learn from this something very interesting. Okay, so this bothers me enough. I'm not completely bothered just yet. I'm going to point out a few more things before we get really irritated. The premise in the beginning of the Mishnah is what? The point that he's trying to get across. Okay, I can't teach you all the Mishnayot. I just want to teach you a little bit of how these Mishnayot are there's a lot of meaning folded into this. You began the Mishnah by telling me what? Because if I read this quickly in Beit HaKnesset, so I say, okay, it's a nice Mishnah, he's slapping me on the wrist, you don't learn enough Torah. And he's trying to inspire me to learn more, etc. He began by saying what? Oy lahem labriyot, like you should beware of all of you creations. He usually refers to people. Because of the albon, because of the offense, the insult to the Torah. Okay, so you're on step 1, don't offend, don't insult the Torah.
Yeah, but if I don't study the Torah, I don't necessarily insult it.
We're starting to cook with gas at this point, my friend. Okay? For anyone who does not preoccupy himself with the Torah is called yelled at. Okay, forget yelled at for now. Anyone who doesn't preoccupy himself with the Torah is doing what?
So if you're not preoccupying yourself, you're insulting it.
If the Torah is not one of my priorities, it is by its very definition an insult. This is what happens when I allow the Torah to fall from priority number 1, 2, 3. All of a sudden the Torah it's insulted. And because the Torah is insulted, I deserve to be yelled at. I deserve to be admonished, right? How do I know? Because of the pasuk that says nothing of the sort. Not even an allusion, not even a hint. Absolutely nothing to do with it. Nezem zahav ba'af hazir, isha yafa v'sarata. Right? A golden nose in the ring, a golden ring in the nose of a pig. A beautiful woman who has no taste. A woman who is lacking taste. Maybe what Yohan is trying to say is that this is how you deserve to be yelled at. Like the insult that you deserve for not learning enough Torah is you're like a pig with a golden ring, and the ring is pretty, but you're disgusting. Okay, so perhaps. But you see where I'm going with this, right?
Yeah.
You started by telling me, you should all be ashamed of yourselves for the insult of the Torah. Then you went on and said, anyone who doesn't learn Torah. You could have said anybody who insults the Torah. We'd be talking, if that's the case, who would we be talking about? Who insults the Torah? Ovdei Kochavim, atheists, agnostics, leminehem, communists, socialists, etc. All these people who erase. People who erase, who cut the name of God out of every place that appears in the public sphere, in public discourse, in public places, in public buildings. That's an insult to the Torah, to deny the fact that their Creator exists. So to say anyone who insults the Torah deserves to be admonished, it's not really much of a chidush, is it? We have plenty of other sources, plenty of other proofs that people who insult the Torah and offend the Torah deserve to be punished. In fact, half of Sefer Mishlei talks about the Kasil, the Ewil, the Rasha, the people who have a certain degree of intellect, a certain degree of sophistication.
But it doesn't really say admonish, it says yella. So
Nazuf, yeah. Nazuf literally means to yell at someone. Linzuf.
So it's actually even more than admonishing, because I can admonish him with, oh, no, don't do this, it's wrong. Well, I can scream at him because we're doing something wrong. It's actually much more vocal.
It's right. Well, maybe more violent,
right,
in a way, because to admonish someone, there's more than one way to do it. Linzof implies, actually, know what it implies. If I'm going to be nozef in someone, what does it imply?
That I'm going to have a management to be physically.
Maybe not physically, but what might I be guilty of doing if I gave you a nazifa in front of someone else?
I'm not going to embarrass you.
You would almost say I'm insulting you, right? Now we're starting to cook with gas. Okay, we're in gear 2. Anyone who, everybody should be ashamed of themselves for the insult, for the offense, the affront to the Torah. Why? Because anybody who doesn't learn Torah should be yelled at, should be, violently, vigorously admonished. Wait a second. So this is a loaded sentence. First of all, you equated me, someone who doesn't learn Torah or doesn't make it my priority, to someone who offends or insults the Torah. And now what's your response to this? You deserve to be shouted out. You deserve to be admonished. You deserve to be yelled at. So we're getting there. We're starting to make progress. Now what happens? You quote a pasuk. What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says you get yelled at. No, it's actually a pretty eloquent pasuk. It captures very nicely this concept of misplaced beauty. Nezem zahav be'af hazir risha efa v'saratam. Like what's apparently a beautiful ring of gold in the nose of a pig, this is the value of a woman who's beautiful, but she has no taste. She has no taste. At the very simple pshat level of the pasuk, it's referring to a woman who has no tzniut.
Okay.
So you see a woman who maybe does certain things professionally, and nobody wants to marry her, so she might have physical beauty to her, but it's tasteless. There's no reason who would want a relationship with a woman like this. Half of New York, but that's why New York looks the way it does. No offense to Italy or France, I'm sure she would find customers there too.
Oh.
So what are you telling me? Okay, because you have to really unfold these mishnayot very carefully. So now you're telling me, maybe this is how I deserve to be insulted. How I deserve to be insulted? You called me a pig. You called me a pig with a golden nose ring.
So now my question is not that. My question is going to be, why don't you reverse the two psukim? So if you discuss the tablets written by Baruch Hu, before talking about this analogy, then I can get the connection easier.
See, according to Rosh Ben-Levi, you deserve to be insulted first.
Okay.
So let me first give you 5 across the eyes.
Okay, that's fine.
now that I've smacked the golden nose ring off of your face, we can delve a little bit deeper into understanding the Torah, the mitzvot, and what it is that we're supposed to be doing here.
Because the Mount Horeb is the one from what they were saying the Torah, right?
Correct.
So is that a concept? Is that the echo-time itself?
We have a Hargrizim, Harival, but Horeb we made certain, we answered amen to certain klalot, and we said, right, in Eretz Yisrael we were going to be doing this. Har Horeb is where we learned about it, and then we're supposed to be doing this. It was a public execution of what what Hashem made us. 6 Shavatim on one mountain, 6 Shavatim on the other mountain, right?
So is where one of the 6 of the 12 were staying in the Mount Horeb, and the 6 were in the other.
I believe it was the Har Horeb that we were told to do this on Har Gerizim and Har Rival. Then we received a bunch of mitzvot at Har Horeb. Now, the idea, and again, this is it's conjecture. I mean, it seems this seems to be what he's saying. It must be what he's saying because this is what he said. He didn't say anything else. So he's telling you, you deserve to be admonished. Why is this admonishment? Why would being yelled at like this or being insulted like this make sense in the context of the insult or the affront to the Torah?
Because it's like, I think the first understanding that the woman actually tastes like somebody like is new. I think it would not be consistent with the first part of the sentence, which is the golden nose of pig. That seems like more
well, let's understand the pasuk. The pasuk is telling you here.
There is one thing in common though, is that you have something that is valuable associated with something that is less.
Exactly. So that's not
And that's-
Shiur, though.
if you
This
go-
is more about you have something beautiful, which is the ring in this case. Actually, the first thing in this case is cannot be misinterpreted. It's like the first.
The pig is not considered the most attractive of animals, correct?
And you have the most beautiful tongue. So it's like the Torah, which is like
So Nizam Zahav Ba'af Hazir is a reference to the Torah.
the ring would be the Torah, and
The chazir would be us if we don't study.
Right.
it.
Exactly.
Maybe I understand a little bit differently. The pasuk itself. I mean, I don't know how one for one the comparison is, or maybe you're reading it. I tend to read it a little bit more abstractly. Just like a golden nose ring has absolutely no place on a pig, so too the apparent beauty of a woman who has absolutely no foundation upon which you can build a relationship, let alone a family,
it's a wasted.
is a total waste of gold. Exactly. In other words, this woman, her beauty is compared to the gold. So gold is precious, it's valuable, it's beautiful, etc. And you put it in the stupidest possible place. You couldn't find a more idiotic place to waste gold than the nose of a pig. Not only this, nose rings generally are associated with beauty, at least in antiquity. David will keep his fashion comments to himself. I believe they've come back into the vogue, but the idea of decorating a pig is so obscene when you think about it. So of all places to start, you would go to its nose. Like, it's the only thing wrong with a pig is its nose, right? Not that it's fat, or that it eats everything, or that it even consumes its own babies. A lot of issues you have with pigs, but no, it's the fact that the pig, its nose needed a little bit of airbrushing. Needed to be photoshopped. Isha yafa v'sara ta'am, the irony is that the second example is much more extreme, in the sense that it could be a woman who has a perfect, flawless body. In antiquity, that meant she weighed a half a ton. Today, you call her skinny, whatever you. Skinny is the or fat is the new skinny. I don't know if it's coming back or if it's going out of style. But back in antiquity, regardless of the midot, the physical midot of the woman in question, you talk about a woman who's beautiful. Typically, society tends to be very critical of beauty. So for a woman to be called an isha yafa means we're talking about a woman who has a perfect, flawless, 72 faceted diamond of a body. And her entire body, the beauty of her body, is compared to a pig. It's in the wrong place. Because her heart and her mind and her nefesh are so putrid, are so degenerate, none of her beauty makes any more sense than putting a gold ring on a pig. So her behavior is that of a pig, and the gold ring is compared to her beauty. Okay, what's the point that I'm trying to make? Of all the psukim that you could have come up with, right? This is how you lead me to believe I deserve to be admonished for not learning Torah. Let's extract this a little bit. Let's decompress the files. Yon, if I'm not learning Torah, chances are I'm doing what? Or what is my preoccupation if it's not Torah?
Something material.
Something material. Maybe gold in your case, maybe beauty in his case, but probably something more physical and less spiritual. And the pig, this is very interesting, by the way. You know that the most prominent feature of a pig's face is its nose, right? So this is what sticks out about them. You know that pigs historically have been used to find things like truffles in Italy and in France. And the word hazir, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. What's the etymology of hazir?
Chazir, coming back.
Right, lahazor means to return or to come back. We also use this root, this etymological root, lahazir. Lahazir means to look after something very carefully or very devotedly. So, for example, the Gemara says, Masechet Kiddushin, derech ha'ish lehazer achar ha'isha. Like it's more common, it's more found that a man should be the one looking after, desperately seeking his wife. So it's true, a woman is looking to get married, but a man is mehazer. Like what is lehazer? We also have the expression, by the way, when it comes to tzedakah. Lehazer ala petachim means literally to go from door to door. I ask you a question. Someone who's looking to collect tzedakah, every door for him represents what?
A gold mine.
Potentially. I mean, maybe a penny, maybe $1, maybe more. So for Chazal to use the expression lehazer ala petachim, it's not over ala petachim, like he goes over the entrances. Someone who's desperately seeking money and who's looking for something to eat how carefully do you think he's going to be to make sure that every door gets knocked? Okay, this is what we call lechazer in Hebrew. Means literally like he's going back, he's reviewing, he's repeating, he's like making sure, extra careful that he found everything he's looking for. Pigs are this way. They'll dig and they'll keep on digging. They do a lot of agricultural damage unless the farm is built for them, because they're relentless. They search without control, without apologies. They dig things up, they turn things around, they can dig up trees just to get what they're looking for. What does this mean in terms of looking for a wife? Right? Literally means like you're seeking pretty intensively. It means you're making a pretty thorough search. I'm looking for my wife. I'm looking for the other half of my neshama. I'm going to be pretty darn sure, like someone who's knocking on every door looking for an opportunity, I want to be pretty sure that I found the right one, or that I'm looking, or that I haven't. I'll leave no stone unturned, as we say in English, in my search for a wife. So the hazir, was that?
You don't want to look at all of them.
Right. Well, but you want to make sure that at least amongst the ones that you've been dating, you didn't miss an opportunity. So the hazir, especially with the help of its nose, right? And they snort a lot, pigs. Chazal knew that this is a very prominent feature of the pig. The hazir is always looking for what to eat. And even though it's fat, it continues to look for more food. It's never fat enough, the pig. Okay, it makes for succulent meat. It also makes for a pretty fat and disgusting animal. And in no culture is calling someone a pig considered a compliment. No culture I'm aware of, maybe in China or Vietnam, I don't know. None of the cultures of the West. So the hazir, who is constantly looking for its own material enrichment, represents an individual whose desires or pursuits are out of control. I'm not looking for Torah, I'm not looking for spirituality. In fact, I bury my face in the dirt looking for more and more material enrichment. Someone who doesn't study Torah, someone who's preoccupied with business, with making a living, with money, with vacations, with living a luxurious lifestyle, is basically decorating the nose of the pig. In other words, you're saluting the pursuit of material wealth, material enrichment. None of it is ever going to be enough. No matter how wealthy you are, you're always going to be looking for more, because this is the nature of these appetites for power, for influence, for status, etc. And this is such a perverse mentality that a woman who's completely untrustworthy can be compared to this, meaning someone who's constantly, and think about this by the way, in terms of the balance of the pasuk, because it's a zinger of a pasuk. The hazir is looking for every opportunity to eat and to fatten itself a little bit more. A woman who has no ta'am, assuming that she's a professional, and that may apply to politics or to actual street walking, is also basically poor and looking to gratify herself with a little bit of money and to humiliate herself in the process at each and every opportunity. So effectively, this is what you can compare very easily to a hazir, someone who's looking for every possible opportunity to do everything you should not be doing. You miss every possible opportunity to do the right thing. In other words, if this woman could focus on one person, settle down, keep a relationship going, maybe she could start a family. But no, she's more interested in looking pretty, attracting people, getting attention, getting wealth, and moving on. So it's a pretty harsh admonishment for someone who doesn't preoccupy himself with the Torah, but he's telling you a lot more. He's telling you it's not just that you don't learn Torah. Would you be insulted if I didn't talk to you for a while? Friendly relationships. Guys, I don't know, women, they're a different nation. But when it comes to guys, do you have a best friend that you talk to every single day? Wouldn't that be a little bit weird? If it's someone who lives in your building, it's a neighbor you see every time you go downstairs. But say that I talk to the doorman, I talk to the mailman, I talk to everybody I see. Not a big deal. Do you get offended or insulted if someone doesn't talk to you for a certain period of time? I mean, without any... I'm not saying he's actively ignoring you, right? I'm just saying a lack of contact. Do you get offended by a lack of contact? You have cousins, you have friends. How often do you talk to them? Once a year, twice a year, maybe 3 times sometimes. I don't know. But then you meet each other and you're okay, right? As long as there was no bad blood, there was no fight. Why is there an insult to the Torah if I don't study it?
Because the simple fact that not putting the Torah into a priority is putting God into non-priority, which is absurd.
And once again, we're now in 4th gear. Wait a second. Some people learn more Torah, some people learn less. Some people don't learn Torah at all. Hey, it is what it is, On the absolute value scale, all I can tell you is that some people are more inclined to learning and some people are a little bit less. So how much you learn Torah is the nature of the insult? Or is the nature of the insult... So how did you offend or insult the Torah by not learning it? What's the elmon involved in not learning Torah? It's not so much the fact that you're not learning Torah. It's what you're doing instead of learning Torah that's almost incomprehensible to someone who's looking at this from a little bit, let's say, a somewhat higher perspective. A simple reading of the Mishnah. You should learn Torah, and you should feel bad if you don't learn enough. You're right, I should do more. So I'm not learning Torah, it's one thing. I'm not learning Torah, and I'm spending weekends in the Bahamas looking at all kinds of naked men and women walk around on the beach. Maybe sometimes you need to unwind, it's one thing, but for people who preoccupy themselves with nonsense, with stupidity, with vain pursuits, with things that lead nowhere and go nowhere, that's the insult of the Torah. This is where you spend your thoughts and your time and your efforts and your money and your planning. You know, you've got like people think about their vacations all year long, and they think about gratifying themselves with fancy new technologies and new clothing and, decking out their apartments and cars, etc. But the reality is that the insult that's incurred, the offense that's brought against the Torah is not so much that I'm not learning. It's the stupid things that I pursue with so much desire, with such an appetite, with so much fervor. It's like, this is what I live for. I can't wait to go to a stadium, watch a football game, get drunk, and get into a fight with somebody. So people work, and you save money, and you set it aside time, and then you post pictures on Instagram as if this is like, the redemption of Am Yisrael. So the insult to the Torah is not just that people don't learn it; it's that they ascribe a value to such vain and imbecilic things. It's that they prize these things, they chase after them, they spend money on them, they spend time on them. So I still don't understand what the use of the pasuk is. In other words, what you're trying to tell me is what? Some people learn Torah and some people don't. No, it's worse than that. Some people learn Torah and some people preoccupy themselves with, idiotic, empty, go nowhere kinds of hobbies or pastimes. The pasuk, although he could have chosen 100,000 other pasukim, the pasuk is coming to tell you, there is something you can learn from the material physical world, and it's something you should be able to apply to your spiritual pursuits as well. Just like the hazir is in a relentless pursuit. It spends its entire life, from the second it's born until the second it dies, it spends its entire life eating. And you know what the difference between a pig and a ruminating animal is? I don't know if you've ever been on a farm or observed ruminating animals.
At some point, the ruminating animal stops and chews
ruminates.
Yeah.
Even the cow stops eating at some point, right? They'll chew what they've already been eating. The pig never stops. The pig never stops eating. It'll eat, it'll digest, it'll continue eating, continue digesting. There's no period at which the pig actually gets tired, unless it's sleeping. There's no period at which, in fact, they reproduce up to 3 times a year. Whereas your average ruminating animal works on an annual cycle, once a year, and that's it. They're prolific eaters, they're prolific procreators. They're very heavy on the material side of existence. And so they represent a lot of things for us. But just like the pig is mehazer, it never passes up an opportunity. It never misses anything. It'll turn over every stone, it'll turn over every tree trunk or every root or every branch in its way in order to find something to eat. And if you want to observe the beauty of the parallel, you would say the same thing as we said about tzedakah. The same thing is true of a prostitute. A woman who's out there looking to make a living, she doesn't even care that she has no dignity. She doesn't care that she has no respect. What does she care about?
The cash.
The bottom line, the cash. Right? Give me the money, I'll show you the door, and that's it. So this woman is willing to humiliate herself with anyone who pops in. Doesn't matter how tall or short or fat or skinny. Doesn't matter if he's accomplished or successful or unsuccessful. As long as he has cash, money talks. To compare and contrast this with the opportunities that we have on a daily basis, and what generation more than ours, to learn Torah, to fill up little gaps of time that you have with Torah learning. You can listen on your smartphone, you can listen on the radio, you can buy discs if people still use such things as MP3s, I don't even know. You can download shiurim on any digital device that you have. You have opportunities all over the place. If we spent as much time looking to enrich ourselves in Torah as we do enriching ourselves in other ways, the world would certainly not look the way it does. And that's why we deserve to be admonished, because there are people who exhibit these characteristics, and we're not them. There are people who have an appetite. There are people who have an insatiable appetite, albeit for the wrong things. And from them we can learn how we should be living our lives in terms of Torah opportunities to enrich yourself. It takes 2 minutes a day, it takes 5 minutes a day, it doesn't take that long to learn something, to come up for air in a day otherwise full of material pursuits, which is really the way most of life ends up being. Then we take a step into something a little bit more spiritual. Okay, the admonishment, if you understood the musar that was loaded into those lines, הלוחות מעשה אלוקים המה, מכתב אלוהים הוא חרוט על הלוחות. אל תקרא חרוט אלא חירות. What people don't understand about the Torah is that the only way out of your material obsessions, physical obsessions of many kinds, is by learning Torah. In other words, you're not going to put out the fire of our addiction to materialism and material obsession, material wealth, material beauty with material. The only way that you can liberate yourself from Yetzer Hara is by learning to control these appetites and to control these desires. How do you control an appetite or a desire? Well, you can pour buckets and buckets of money and food and pretty girls into it, or you can attack the desire at its root, put it in perspective. This is what I spend my whole day doing, this is what I spend my whole day pursuing, this is how my time here on Olam Hazeh is going to be remembered. It's a little bit heavy in terms of a message, but the point that he's making is, Habibi, the reason the entire world spends so much time and wastes so much time, insults and ignores the Torah, is because they don't realize they're addicted. And the only solution to the addiction is not like a pig to dig your nose even deeper and say, wait a second, this next chestnut, that puts me over the top. I've reached my 2,200 kilocalories for the day, given my body mass index, and how much I weigh. I'm a pig, I weigh 550 pounds. At this point, I should be satiated and I can go read a book under a tree. The pig is never satisfied, is never satiated. Why should you be that? You should be that way when it comes to the Divrei Torah. You should be turning over every leaf, every stone. You should be turning the world inside out in order to find opportunities to do the right thing. Just like the Isha Yafa with Sarrat Ta'am, you should have absolutely no concerns how you look or what people think of you when you do this. If a Zonah thought for a second that she was doing something reprehensible and she really meditated on it, she might go to an employment office and look for a better job. Instead, she doubles down. The money that she makes, what does she use it for? Perfume, clothing, jewelry, makeup. I mean, she invests. She invests in her profession. Okay, that's the professional toolbox, and she invests in it. So she doubles down. The pig, no matter how fat it is, can never be satisfied. This woman, no matter how many times she's humiliated herself in front of hundreds or thousands of people, and she's still willing to do it, she still doubles down on it. When it comes to Torah, the only way that you can liberate yourself from the obsessions of the material world is to obsess yourself with the spiritual world. If you can't develop a healthy appetite for Divrei Torah, if you can't come up for air, if you can't at least a few times a day step back and say, I'm working really hard, I'm breaking a sweat, or I'm getting an ulcer over the stresses that are incurred by making a living, remind me again why I'm doing this. Tell me again, there's got to be something more important. There's got to be something more meaningful to my life than going to work, coming back home, going to work, coming back home, going to work, coming back home. So you need to develop an appetite for perspective, an appetite for meaning, an appetite for truth, an appetite for mitzvot. Otherwise, you're going nowhere. So you can only free yourself from this reality of the hazir, of the miskena, as they used to say in the yeshiva, by addicting yourself to something that's much less harmful, but hopefully habit forming. And there's no free man other than one who preoccupies himself with the Torah, and anyone who preoccupies himself with the study of the Torah becomes uplifted. This is on a little bit of a separate note, but I found it interesting nonetheless. So I become uplifted by learning Torah. I get it. I follow your admonishment, I follow your advice, I understand the insult to the Torah is that it's being replaced with something much less meaningful, much less important. How does the list of places that we camped in prove to me that this is the reality? Learning Torah you have to appreciate this in terms of Chazal and their perspective of the Torah, was not just reading a pasuk and translating it. In fact, the entire Mishnah basically teaches you a ton of things. It teaches you a lot of things. You have to read it slowly, reread it, ask yourself questions, and trouble yourself to find answers to them. So the Mishnah is basically modeling for you, how you should approach Torah learning, how you should approach life. This is what we call, in terms of Torah learning, a remez. It's a remez. It's not an expressly written, direct message. If you do this, you get this. If you do that, you get that. It's a kind of indirect allusion. It's almost funny, like cute, almost coincidental how it works out this way. But I'm not talking about coincidence. I study Torah so that coincidences should happen to me. When you study Torah and when you find depth and when you find nuance and you find sophistication and you find that issues have more than one side, that machlokot have justifications and sources of their own, you start to become much more sensitive to allusions, much more sensitive to deeper meanings of things. You start to be a little bit, you fine-tune your neshama, and you're able to see connections where connections otherwise weren't so apparent. So it's not just that I learn Torah in order to save myself from the material world. It's that if I learn Torah and I get to a really high level, and Chazal, when they're referring to learning Torah, they weren't necessarily referring to reading Mishnayot and memorizing them. They're talking about someone who learns Torah with his entire neshama. You can pick up on very, very fine things. You actually learn how to look for and solve things, how to find answers to your questions in the Torah. And you can use the Torah on a much higher level, not only to stumble upon things, but to find them. Meaning to look for intent, to look for meaning, to look for, there has to be more, show me where it is. There has to be a connection, I'm just waiting to see it. It's the ability to take your Torah learning from something passive to something more active, where I can say, not only do I learn Torah and enjoy it, this is where I go, and this is where I can, really expand my mind, and I can use connections and references and hints and allusions, and I can, make comparisons and contrasts. You become fluent in it, and it just fuels your appetite for more learning and for more, for more ruchaniut, for more spirituality. It becomes addictive, to the point that you can look at psukim and you can say, look at that. If you connect these words, and if you go to the etymological root of these three, you end up with something that's like a progression. And it's true. Obviously, we're going from one level to the next. The irony, though, and I'll conclude the way we started, is that bamot, that you're in a high place doesn't necessarily mean you're in the right place. In other words, bamot Baal is the way it's referred to. It was this, must have been either a plateau or a series of altars that were constructed for Avodah Zarah. It all goes back to your priorities. You uplift, you revere, you give importance to things that you consider to be towards the top of your list of priorities. So in the beginning, the Torah was given to us. Here's the Torah, take it, trust me, you'll one day find meaning in it. Eventually it becomes nahalat, it becomes something that's part of you, it's part of your family, part of your lifestyle, your culture, your tradition, etc. But to reach bamot is to reach a point where you uplift the Torah. Which is ironic, because what did he say when you learn Torah?
You are uplifted.
Torah uplifts you. Right? We have an expression like this, if you're familiar with it, from the Aron. Right? Bakatef Isa, we're told that they used to lift the Aron on their shoulders, and the Gemara actually tells us very explicitly, the Aron is not allowed to be touched, it's not allowed to be lifted. And this was what happened with David HaMelech and Uzzah, one of his close friends, when they brought the Aron back from Eretz Palestine, because the Palestinians stole it. They wanted something to put in their museum. So he got very excited, Uzzah, and he saw that the cattle that were drawing the cart on which the Aron had been placed, perhaps by non-Jews at the time, looks like the cattle had come free of the cart. He was afraid the Aron was going to fall. So he comes to pick it up, and he dies. And this big celebration got interrupted, and David HaMelech called the place Peretz Be'Uzzah. This is where there was this outbreak of divine justice, and it happened on Uzzah, not supposed to touch the Aron. What did he not know, Uzzah? Chazal said, Ha'aron noseh et nosa'ahu. Those who lift it, it lifts them. In other words, instead of lifting it and it weighs on you, you lift it and it picks you up. You become light-footed. You can start walking like this for miles. You don't feel you're getting tired. In the beginning, you receive the Torah as a gift. Someone gives you ideas that you didn't work for. Ideas you didn't appreciate, right? This is spiritual socialism. young child, doesn't know anything, can't understand anything, so you bombard the child with spiritual gifts. Here, I'll give you a present. Tzedakah, it's really important. Kibud Abayim is really important. Keeping Shabbat is really important. You don't understand why. You didn't work hard. You didn't actually, break a sweat trying to understand these concepts. You just received them as a gift. You receive them as a gift, you also don't appreciate them because you didn't work for them. It's the nature of socialism. Nahaliel is where you begin to do things by habit. This is what we do. It's our culture. Whether or not you're religious, you don't go to work on Yom Kippur. Whether or not you're religious, you hear the shofar Rosh Hashanah. At least it used to be up until recently. Bamot is not just, I learned a little bit of Torah, I should be proud of myself and I can pat myself on the back, and now everyone in society can kiss my rings. It's quite to the contrary. When you humble yourself in the presence of the Torah, when you make the Torah your number one priority, the Torah uplifts you in the sense that it fills you with knowledge, but only because you're the one who's uplifting it. Because you make the Torah your priority, because you make the Torah your lifestyle, because you make this what you do, what you look for, what you think about, what you obsess over, and what you look for each and every opportunity in order to learn, that's when the Torah itself uplifts you too. Although, ironically, you look as possessed with the Torah as a woman walking the street looking for money, or as a pig looking for food. So it's a very funny Mishnah in the way that it begins and ends with this.
It starts with us.
It starts?
With us, not with him.
Absolutely. Right, and the process is this: it's like matana nachaliel bamot. First, you get a gift, then you somehow you make an acquisition on it. You like a kinyan. Fine, I learned these things a few times. It becomes a part of my life, my conscious, my thinking. But bamot is where I have to decide what I put on the altar. I have to decide what I make a priority of. And yes, technically I become uplifted. But how do I become uplifted? Because I went through this process where I uplifted the Torah, where I decided this is what I want, this is what I'm going to pursue, this is what I'm focused on. And so that happens, I'll talk about this a little bit of the Shavuot, but this concept of the Shekhinah, it's not that you chase it, it's that it chases you. That's the catch. So, Shabbat Khair, sorry to be a little bit late, but yeah.